Oh my god, he's alive. Yeah, I know. This is becoming a McGTV tradition where I'll have a surge of creativity and an output of a lot of content, and then I will disappear for a couple of months, and then reappear again and give you a little state of the channel address. I know, I do this a lot, and I'm probably going to keep doing it. I've just accepted it at this point. Because, as I'm sure a lot of you have gathered, this is not my day job. Because if it was, financially, I'd be a lot more wrecked than I am. No, I've got a lot of other things just kind of taking focus in my personal and professional life. Nothing negative or anything like that, or anything that's causing me distress or harm or anything. It's just there's a lot of things, a lot of different things in motion that I have to kind of figure out for myself in terms of my work life and my personal life, as we're all trying to work our way back to some semblance of normalcy. And as we think we've got it, then it gets yanked away from us again, and then gradually brought back, and then yanked away again, gradually brought back. Just wear your masks and get vaccinated, please. I want to just give you a little update on what to expect from me content-wise going forward, because now I'm feeling like I'm in the upswing of like, let's do some stuff. So I'm going to do some stuff. First and foremost, the Smallville series retrospective that I got started with a whopping 2 episodes. That's still happening. I have actually recorded and filmed some stuff, and I really want to get to that stuff and show you guys that stuff. And so expect more updates and more installments for that retrospective to arrive, in the next month or so, because I really am going to start committing to it. The problem was just that, as along with, stuff in my real world doings taking focus, it was getting to be a little deflating to have to come back from that into marathoning seasons of Smallville. I'm going to try to be as even-handed as I can in analysis of this show. I really do want to do that, but man, it can be a dirge when you chain together episodes that just repeat over and over, when you have episodes that have next to no differences between them in succession. Somebody save me. Video essays. Well, I've got ideas, and I'll actually talk about a couple here that I might flesh out further. It's just a matter of like starting an idea, and then if I feel there's any potential to grow it further, like I did with, say, The Elephant Man, which was a very kind of improvised in the moment idea that grew far beyond what I thought it was going to be, to something a little bit more structured, or a little bit more, creatively different than what stuff I've done before with regards to the Until the End of the World essay. A lot of ideas start and then they immediately stop if I feel there's no potential for them, but then there's some that I'll come back to and grow a little bit further. So it's a process. It's a process of being comfortable about wanting to talk about certain aspects of films and other media. Thankfully, things are in motion due to being able to have creative outlets in watching some meaningful movies and series and having some interesting things to read. So I want to share a little bit of what's kind of been keeping me going through this hiatus, these couple of months where you never saw me. So let me start first with some interesting reading I've done. These are 2 books from 2 very insightful and funny people, both of them comedians, but also it isn't necessarily pertaining to their comedy life specifically. First up, this is Patton Oswalt's Silver Screen Fiend, which is sort of a chronicling of his early career as not just a blooming stand-up comic, but also getting into movies himself, his move to the West Coast to seek out that career, and how it all ties into his love for classic cinema and classic movies. And this is a case where I'll pop into a chapter here and there, and then I'll move on to another book. I'm one of those types of readers where I can't just sit down and read the whole thing in one sitting. I love how he intersplices significant career moments in his life with being able to witness classic movies at like really specific theaters and boutique cinema experiences, so to speak. Like, there's one chapter here that's dedicated to his time on Down Periscope. You all remember that classic Down Periscope? That is really kind of humorous. And yeah, no, I love the way that this book is structured. And like I said, he's funny, but also there's a lot of sensitivity and tenderness there. There's a lot of self-deprecation, but it's like sweet-natured self-deprecation at play. And Patton Oswalt really sells these anecdotes, essentially. These are just anecdotes that are chained together really well by the framing device of movies. Helps me appreciate movies even more so, as you can connect them to significant moments in your life, which I will get into with maybe some selections a little bit later. Next up is a little bit of Riding the Elephant from Craig Ferguson, my second favorite late night host, beat out only by Conan. I felt Craig's tenure on the Late Late Show was something drastically different. I loved his very laissez-faire, let's chuck the format of the talk show out the window, and I want to do things on my terms. Producers be damned. Like, I liked that a lot. I liked his very, at times improvisational, frequently improvisational, but at the same time engaging and frankly a lot more relaxed than what I see in a lot of talk show hosts lately. This kind of emulates that chaotic nature from time to time because there is no real set structure in this book. These are just random musings that he's chained together from periods of his life. It'll go from, say, a period of adulthood where he had just regained sobriety to being a teenager again and dealing with a zit to again traveling to when he wasn't sober and kind of chronicling that. And much like Patton, it's full of a lot of self-deprecation and a lot of humor, but also a lot of like seriousness and reflection on kind of the pitfalls and horizons he's achieved in his career and life. And again, it can be a very inspiring and motivational read. And I'll oftentimes maybe just bounce between this book and Silver Screen Fiend. The beast that has been taking up most of my time lately, just because there is a pending film adaptation on the horizon, has been Dune. I've been getting back into Dune because I am genuinely very excited for Denis Villeneuve's adaptation coming in the fall. And I want to try to retain as much information regarding the character beats and plot elements in the novel so I can go into the film adaptation and really just like get engaged, because I'm one of those people who will get engaged in what has been enhanced and what has been jettisoned in a film adaptation for the sake of narrative cohesion and smoothing things out. I am really excited to see what Villeneuve does with this material, especially since, you know, it would be a feat to pull this off and make it both a critical and financial success, seeing as how, you know, we had the great David Lynch try his hand at it to mixed results, and there's been plenty of like television adaptations out there, and even Jodorowsky's grand sci-fi epic that he has a full-on book dedicated to, but nothing else could come of it because it was far too grand for the time probably, and his eye was probably a little bit too wide for that particular endeavor. But yep, getting back into the world of Dune to the best of my abilities. I know I have the other two sequels that follow this somewhere on my shelf, and I will probably hunt them down as soon as I'm done with this. So I also mentioned movies kind of being a solid anchor for me during this up and down time where I wasn't sure if I was going back to in-person work, or, you know, I wasn't sure like what kind of my schedule was going to be. As of right now, you know, I'm still kind of staying close to home base, and so I've got a lot of time on my hands to peruse some movies and explore some new stories that I haven't seen. And thankfully it's July, which means it's half off Criterion sale at Barnes & Noble and on the Criterion website. So go out there, get yourself some culture, get yourself some varied cinematic experiences from a variety of different directors and storytellers. So I'm going to just share with you, this isn't my full pull of July yet, because July just started, baby. So I might get some more. But these are just a couple that have been in the regular rotation, and even some that I bought before the half-off sale. Like, you'll see a familiar one here. But first up, Until the End of the World. I talked about this in my video essay, how much I'm enamored with this film. I still am. About 3-4 months after I purchased it, still love it. And even though, yeah, it's almost 5 hours long, this has become the perfect creative white noise film for me. Depending on my mood, I'll put in either disc 1 or disc 2. Disc 1 is usually my more amped up, energetic type of film, where if I need to get active or need to kind of keep a creative idea going and flowing, I'll put that in, because that first act clips along pretty well for the most part. It still has an energy and kind of vibrancy to it that part 2 purposefully gets rid of, just because that's when things slow down and we get into the trippier, dreamier stuff. And that's the part I'll put on when I need to kind of just take things easy. When I need to just relax, I'll watch the beautiful Solveig Martin trip out on dreams. Man, we lost a tremendous talent in her. Beautiful film. To kind of go along with the Wim Wenders Love, another film of his from earlier in his career and far shorter, Paris, Texas. I purchased this last week. This has become one of my new favorites, and in fact, this is the film that inspired me to finally get back to doing this stuff, because I want to talk about this movie. I feel there's a lot to talk about here, because this is him really settling into the road movie genre that Until the End of the World is a part of, that this very much represents. There's listlessness, there's ennui there, much like there was in Until the End of the World, except here it is fleshed out, I feel, more clearly than it is in Until the End of the World. The wandering, the disconnect at times, the quirkiness, all of it is given far more potent context in Paris, Texas. And when you finally realize kind of what has taken place with these characters, with Harry Dean Stanton's lead, with Natasha Kinski, it is both, as I mentioned on Twitter, it's both heartwarming and a gut punch at the same time. Like this, I was in tears quite a few times while watching this, especially the second to last scene in this movie. It wrecks me, because the performances are just that raw, just that soft-spoken, but still like so, I don't know, knife twisting at times. But yeah, Paris, Texas, I cannot recommend it enough. I feel a little embarrassed I didn't get to it sooner. This was from 1984. I can forgive young me for not catching up with this, because I was a wee one at the time, but I'm glad I'm able to see it now. I finally got around to the whimsy that is Fantastic Mr. Fox. And yes, these are a lot of Criterions. I tried showing this to somebody, and they just couldn't get into it because of Anderson's whimsy, I guess, his particular style. It works for some people and it doesn't work for others. It works for me just fine. I can acknowledge that there is repetition, and I can acknowledge that not many people will be enamored by that repetition. But here I feel it's served very well, partly because of the animation, partly because of just the inherent quirkiness and the dry humor at play. I'm just a fan of the design of this film overall. Like, the visual aspect of it is really captivating to me, but there are moments that I get caught up in sort of the narrative and the characters. The Willem Dafoe's rat has a point in the film that I find myself getting choked up at for some reason, even though he's sort of a villain. It's really well put together. It's a lot of when I saw Isle of Dogs, I was like, you know what? I'm going to get around to Fantastic Mr. Fox eventually, and I have. And I'm glad I have. I've also seen Grand Budapest Hotel. It's somewhere around here, and I like it just as much, especially the changing aspect ratios. But this is definitely the Anderson film that I've been coming back to more frequently for kind of a pick-me-up. Speaking of pick-me-up, well, not necessarily, because these three movies kind of pick me up, then drop me, then pick me up again and drop me, kind of all over the place emotionally. This is the Krzysztof Kieslowski Three Colors trilogy, Blue, White, and Red. These films are a trip. These films are so chock full of things to get into, recurring motifs, stellar performances across the board for what they need to be, because these films are drastically different from one another, and each of them, narratively, performance-wise, all succeed. My favorite out of the whole trilogy is Blue, starring Juliette Binoche. She, for the first 15 minutes of this movie, she absolutely hypnotized me with what she was doing in terms of her character and in terms of the absolutely devastated point in which her character starts off. How do you expect this character to come back from what's happened to her? White, I enjoyed quite a bit. I'd say between these three, White is not as strong as the other two, but it's still highly enjoyable, still has a very... it's a very weird story, but it works for what it is. And it kind of ties in a little bit to some elements of the next film I'm going to talk about after the trilogy here. But it's got a quirky sense of humor to it. But the last scene in White can be both amusing and, again, heart-wrenching. And then finally Red, which is so full of kind of affection and love. I immediately fell in love with the two leads in this, our young female protagonist and the miserly old hermit that she inadvertently ends up befriending. Really great collection, and it's a cinematic universe too. So look for those Marvel-esque cameos. Seriously, it's a pretty good cinematic universe. Finally, Tie Me Up, Tie Me Down from Pedro Almodovar. This, when I first saw it, I didn't know how to feel in the end, just because I didn't know what it was about going into it. I was introduced to this movie by somebody, and as it went along, I was kind of like, okay, where's this going? What exactly is the genre for this movie? And by the end, there was a point in the movie where I'm like, what? Why is this now suddenly why is it suddenly taking this turn? So I wasn't fully on board with it on the initial viewing, just because, let's put it this way, there's stuff in this movie that could potentially be triggering for some people. It's material that definitely with a lot of today's modern sensibilities and sensitivities to certain topics, I can understand people seeing this and being like, ew. Upon repeat viewings, I got a better understanding of where this movie's coming from in terms of its kind of take on sexual dynamics and politics, in terms of agency for its female protagonist, and in terms of its other main character. I'm not going to say he's a protagonist, but he is played by Antonio Banderas. And let's put it this way, out of all of the crazed abductors in cinema history, he's definitely the most baby-faced and charming, kinda. There's stuff here that a lot of people might be kind of like, what's appealing about this? And at some point, I want to do an essay about it, because I feel there's a lot of different layers at play. I mentioned already a little bit about when it comes to the sexual kind of dynamics between the two leads, when it comes down to the idea of, say, fetish, and how it could play into one's engagement with this type of material, perhaps, even though this isn't really a very fetishistic type of film, but I definitely say there's an element there. But it also it gets more and more funny the more times I watch it. Like it's dark humor, certainly, like to the point that it's almost gallows humor, but not quite. But if you can't see certain scenes in here and kind of just go a little, huh, okay, just because of the inherent absurdity of why things are taking place, but also because there is a shade of some more horrific things at play. This is like essentially a thriller horror movie mixed in with sort of a screwball rom-com. And make of that what you will. It's definitely a viewing experience that has stayed with me since I first saw it, just because I didn't think it was terrible when I finished it, but also I wasn't entirely sold on it. And so I was kind of like, I'm going to need to go back and see this. And so I did. And now I'm kind of like, I see what they're going for here. So that's definitely one I want to talk about at some point. But it's definitely one that I want to be prepared to talk about and handle the topic as best as I can. Yeah, those are sort of the films that have been keeping me going, keep me creatively incentivized to want to come back and do videos. And those have been sort of the stories and experiences pulled from other creative people that I've kept in rotation. So I'll be back with some stuff soon, definitely. I want to do more stuff podcast-wise, Smallville retrospective series, more of the video essays and video logs. And, you know, I have ideas for like shorts that I want to do for you here. I promise. New material is coming, whether or not it'll be as fast as I hope it will. Who's to say? But thank you for sticking with me thus far and supporting the channel. Like and subscribe. I hate saying that, but I know it's a necessity. Thanks all. Be safe out there, and I'll see you soon.